This morning, the Minister and I have an important announcement. And this one's for the mums and dads. Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it. I've spoken to thousands of parents, grandparents, aunties and uncles. They, like me, are worried sick about the safety of our kids online. And I want Australian parents and families to know that the government has your back. I want parents to be able to say, sorry mate, it's against the law for me to get you to do this. We don't argue that the changes that we will be legislating will fix everything immediately. We have laws such as people can't buy alcohol if they're under 18, and from time to time that can be broken. But those laws set what the parameters are for our society, and they assist in ensuring the right outcomes. Now, government's proposed age is 16. That decision was made in Cabinet on Monday, and that proposal will go to the National Cabinet meeting that I'm convening online, a virtual meeting tomorrow morning. The onus will be on, just to go through some of the details, the onus will be on social media platforms to demonstrate they are taking reasonable steps to prevent access. The onus won't be on parents or young people. There will be no penalties for users. The e-Safety Commissioner will provide oversight and enforcement. The legislation will come into force 12 months after passage. There will be a review of the legislation following its commencement to make sure this is world-leading legislation. We want to make sure that it is got right. The e-Safety Commissioner will issue regulatory guidance setting out what reasonable steps can be taken by platforms, and that will be informed by the age assurance trial. A new definition of age-restricted social media platform will be adapted from the existing Online Safety Act definition of social media service for the purpose of the age limit. This definition will have flexibility to be narrowed through regulations, because we want to make sure, for example, that young people can continue to access educational services, for example. We will introduce privacy protections for information collected for age assurance purposes. The legislation won't feature grandfathering arrangements. We will not allow exemptions if users have parental consent, something that we discussed whether that would be appropriate or not. And it will apply to holding an account and allow for access to social media in a logged out state. We think there will be some, of course, exclusions and exemptions as well for this, to make sure that there aren't unintended consequences. But we think this is absolutely the right thing. This would be the number one discussion outside the school gate, on the sideline of tennis, cricket, football, netball, swimming, as parents gather. It's something that is of enormous concern, and we know the social harm that can be caused, and we know the consequences here. I'll be meeting with some families soon later on this morning. I spoke to Kelly O'Brien, Charlotte's mum, a couple of weeks ago about the circumstances of her daughter's tragedy, and I'll be meeting Matt and Kelly O'Brien along with some other parents later this morning, along with the Minister. I do want to pay tribute to the campaign that's been run by media organisations on this. I do want to single out News Corp for the campaign that they've run, Let Kids Be Kids. It's an example of a media organisation being engaged in something that's of concern to the community. And I want to particularly pay tribute to the Minister here. This Minister has worked through what is a really complex series of issues. We have had a range of discussions around the small room down there in terms of the Cabinet to make sure that we're in a position to fulfil the commitment that we've made, that legislation will be introduced this year, and we will be introducing legislation when Parliament returns in a fortnight's time. The Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister. The Albanese government is focused on positive solutions to issues of national concern, and the issue of the harms that are being caused to young people through social media is right up the top of that list. What we are announcing here and what we will legislate will be truly world-leading. The welfare of children is a collective responsibility, and it is heartening, as the Prime Minister said, through National Cabinet to see the Commonwealth and states and territories working together for a common outcome. We know that social media offers many benefits to Australians, including to young people, as a way of keeping connected, of finding their tribe, of making sure that young people who may otherwise be isolated by geography or other factors have that connection. But we also know that it brings many harms. As a mother of 2 young daughters, I understand this personally. I understand this from family and friends. I understand this from my community, as would every member of Parliament. I want to say to those parents, just as the Prime Minister did, when it comes to protecting children from the harms caused by content or addictive behaviours as a result of social media, we are on your side. The fact is that social media has a social responsibility, but the platforms are falling short. And while, as the Prime Minister said, the government may not be able to protect every harm for every child, every place, every time that it occurs, we can make a difference. And that's why we're taking strong action on a number of fronts. As the Prime Minister said, we're seeking support from National Cabinet to approve 16 as the minimum age for accessing social media in Australia. And at arriving at this age, the government has taken a pragmatic approach. We've consulted widely with experts, with parents, with youth organisations, with advocacy groups, with academics, and of course our state and territory colleagues. I want to particularly thank New South Wales and South Australia for jointly hosting the Social Media Summit, which was most instructive in this regard, and also to former Chief Justice French, whose work in this area, including in relation to legislation and the guidance that he has provided, has been invaluable. What our approach does is helps to achieve a balance between minimising those harms that are caused by young people accessing social media, while still enabling connection and inclusion. The normative value that this will provide to parents is immense. So as the Prime Minister said, tomorrow he will be convening National Cabinet to make these recommendations, and we will introduce legislation this year to give effect to this intent.
Thanks very much. If we could have questions on this firstly, and then happy to take other questions.
Yes,
Sure.
You mentioned there young people who had been consulted on this, including stakeholders, but have you consulted social media companies on this and whether they'll actually be able to enforce the rules that you're putting into place, given that the onus will be on them to do it?
Social media companies have been consulted through a variety of means in a variety of work streams that the government is doing in this regard. And part of what our age assurance trial is doing also is going towards those issues of implementation. I should point out that there is a sound reason why there is a 1-year lead-in time. It's to enable the government to give this legislative intent life, but also to ensure that its implementation is capable of being done in a very practical way. I would also point out that there is also a very strong case and evidence here for the fact that social media companies have been put on notice that they need to ensure that the content that they are purveying, but also their practices, need to be made safer. This is the issue of safety by design, which needs to be embedded in these features. But we also know that the social media platforms have already announced, in some cases, versions of their services which are designed to be safer. And I think that form of incentive regulation, even in the absence of the legislation being introduced, has been a positive one.
Yeah, Josh?
Just to follow up on that, I mean, how confident are you that social media companies can actually do this? Prime Minister, you made the example of young people being able to access alcohol, under the age of 18, but shops, verify those ages using a government-issued ID, for instance. I mean, should Australians be prepared for having their faces scanned to use social media? Should they be prepared to upload their documents to some sort of government database that social media companies can then tap into for age verification? I mean, what are the options here? As you say, the age assurance trial hasn't been finalised yet.
Well, this is exactly what the age assurance trial is informing. But let's be clear too, these platforms know their users better than anyone. These platforms understand their habits, their capabilities, what sort of content should be driven to them and what their behaviours are. So in this year that we will take in terms of implementation, that will be the key focus. And as the Prime Minister mentioned, it's very important to have privacy protections in place. This is a complex area, but it is one that we are determined to get right. It's one that we are determined to implement because we know what's at stake here.
And on the alcohol example, I mean, I use that deliberately because what we are wanting to state up front from the very beginning is we don't pretend that you can get a 100% outcome here. And yes, people have to produce ID, but I bet this weekend I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in Australia, someone who is under 18, it is possible that they might get access to some alcohol. Sure, and then
they don't comply. We've seen in the past it's been shown that behind the scenes they've gone out of their way to harness young users, to get them on the platform, to ignore their problems. What happens if they don't? What happens if they keep doing that?
There will be penalties for the platforms, and that's one area that our review of our Act has actually been looking at, and I received the review of that Act only last week, and penalties was a major area of concern in our terms of reference. Currently, under the legislation, the maximum fines are less than $1 million. That's far less than would apply under consumer law, for example. So we will also ensure, given that we have an e-safety regulator, that they are resourced in order to undertake compliance. But it will be very clear from the legislation that the onus will be on the platforms to comply. They will need to take reasonable steps to do that. The e-safety commissioner will have responsibility for enforcement, and there does need to be enhanced penalties to ensure compliance.
we'll go Katina, and then here, and then here, and then I'll ask for broader questions if that's okay.
On the technical side of things, is this actually in fact going to mean that all adults, even those without kids, will have to verify themselves and redo it every time they get a new device? And does that risk just putting offside the majority of social media users who aren't kids or don't have kids? And also, what pushback do you expect from the companies? Obviously, Twitter X has really been pretty against the Online Safety Act and not wanting to comply with things, and Elon Musk looks like he's about to become a very powerful person in American politics. What pushback would you expect?
Well, to your first point, will be very clear from the legislation, as the Prime Minister said, that this onus will be on the platforms, that this will apply to ensuring that there is a minimum age for access for young people, and that minimum age will be 16. So in terms of implementation, as I said, we are undertaking the age assurance trial. There will need to be measures put in place to ensure that reasonable steps are being taken by the platforms to ensure that that age limit is complied with. To your second point about the platforms, this government works with any other government, including our great alliance that we have with the United States. But at the same time, the sovereignty of our laws, the sovereignty of our parliament, and the welfare of Australians is paramount to this government. Every company that operates in Australia, whether domiciled here or otherwise, is expected and must comply with Australian law or face the consequences.
Here and then there. Yep.
Will the legislation still be introduced if you don't get the support of National Cabinet tomorrow?
Look, we're bringing National Cabinet together because there were a range of views about age. And what we wanted to make sure, and that's why this requires national leadership, what we didn't want is for different systems to be established across different states. Common sense tells you that that would not be a good way to go. So I have spoken to a number of premiers already about the meeting that we'll hold online tomorrow morning. We'll hold another press conference here tomorrow after that's over, but I'm pretty confident that we'll get the support. But that's why we're bringing National Cabinet together. To be clear, this will be our legislation that we have been working on for a long period of time, but given the leadership role as well that particularly Premier Malinauskas and Premier Minns have shown in convening the social media summit that they did in the two venues, Sydney and Adelaide, just a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was respectful as well as appropriate, as well as necessary to convene the National Cabinet to get a uniformity so that we can all be on the same page.
Since the idea had been floated to have an age limit for social media, the analogy's always been used that you teach children to swim to help deal with the dangers in like dealing with rips or strong currents rather than just banning them because it's dangerous out there for them. So why ban children from social media when you can teach children to navigate social media, navigate the internet safely in ways that are measured?
Well, can I jump in there to say that assumes an equal power relationship. I don't know about you, but I get things popping up on my system that I don't want to see, let alone a vulnerable 14-year-old. These tech companies are incredibly powerful. These apps have algorithms that drive people towards certain behaviour. The fact is that young women see images of particular body shapes that have a real impact in the real world. And young men, through some of the misogynistic material that they get sent to them, not because they ask for it, but if you're a 14-year-old kid getting this stuff at a time where you're going through life's changes and maturing, it can be a really difficult time. And what we're doing is listening and then acting. So Ron, and then we'll go to other on this.
Yeah.
We'll
transition halfway through.
No,
Minister,
just this, because I'm being fair to everyone.
Minister, does the introduction of an age verification reduce the need to have a complete blanket ban on social media, and is YouTube a social media platform for the purposes of this?
Well, to your first question, and it goes to the last question that was asked as well, we're approaching this from a number of angles. This is one of the guardrails that is there, which goes to access. But we all know that those harms don't end once you turn a certain age. You also have content that is being fed. You also need to ensure that young people are equipped. And that's why this government has made significant investments in digital literacy. We are also, through our review of the Online Safety Act, making sure that it is fit for purpose. We're working across government, including through making sure that deepfake pornography is now specifically categorised as a crime, for example. So we're doing this right across government and in a number of ways. In terms of the services that will be covered, there will be a definition in the Act, but I think it is commonly understood that those definitions of what constitutes social media include ones such as Instagram, TikTok, Facebook and X. YouTube would likely fall within that definition as well. That goes to some of the issues also of exemptions, like whether it is done in a logged out state, and there will be the potential for regulations and also for the eSafety Commissioner to make determinations of what could constitute low risk for the purposes of that exemption regime. So this will have a definition. It will be capable of being worked through making sure that we have, given it's a very dynamic environment, obviously, making sure that it is kept up to date and that eSafety can exercise powers in that regard.
Mark.
Prime Minister, do you feel that you need to apologise for some of the things you've said about Donald Trump in the past?
No, I look forward to working with President Trump. I look forward, I've had demonstrated, I think, my ability to work with world leaders and to develop relationships with them which are positive. And I think that I've demonstrated in the 2.5 years I've had the honour of being Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, was it a mistake to appoint Kevin Rudd as US Ambassador after he criticised Donald Trump, given Trump's influence in the Republican Party and more so now as President-elect?
Kevin Rudd is doing a terrific job as Australia's Ambassador to the United States, and it says a lot about how important we regard the relationship with the United States that we appointed a former Prime Minister.
The President-elect, during the course of the campaign, threatened to impose major tariffs on all imports. Are you bracing for that prospect, and are you confident you'll be able to convince him that Australia should be spared?
Well, Australia has, of course, considered and given consideration to the potential outcomes of the election yesterday. So we've been prepared for that. We've had considerable briefings, whether it be across security, economic and other issues. But Australia's a supporter of trade. We're a trading nation, and we will continue to be advocates for free and fair trade, including through the APEC meeting that I'll be attending with many of you next week in Peru.
Prime Minister, when do you plan to speak to Donald Trump? And secondly, do you concede that the imposition of trade restrictions will have, as Stephen Kennedy was saying yesterday, an impact on growth and inflation?
Firstly, soon. And Stephen Kennedy, of course, responds on behalf of the Treasury. I think that trade is good for the global economy. That's my view. Phil.
As opposition leader and Prime Minister, you've spoken often about inequity in society and the ability to lead to the extremes in politics. You've done a lot on wages and a lot on cost of living. But given the emphatic result in the US, does that give you pause to sort of rethink your path to return in the election? Do you think you need to do more, or do you think the trajectory you're planning on will be sufficient to sort of to ward off what happened here?
I ran in the last election campaign on no one held back and no one left behind. No one left behind, that we needed to make sure that the gaps in equality in terms of income did not continue to grow. And that's why we've been very focused on our industrial relations legislation. Our IR legislation is about giving people a fair crack, giving people a fair wage, same job, same pay. I think when people see that they're working side by side with the same skills, same experience and same capacity, but one is working for the company and the other is working for a contracted out organisation, that's something that creates a great deal of dissent. And that's why we have legislated, and last Friday, the 1st of November, that came into effect. That's why we moved last weekend. Students out there think, hang on, how come, certainly I got a free education, and how come a whole lot of the people here did too, and they've got ever-increasing debt? We're giving them a crack by reducing that by 20%, by increasing the threshold from $54,000 to $67,000. Our rental relief, our support for families through childcare relief, our support for single parenting payments. These are all designed to not leave people behind. But more than that as well, we're the party of aspiration, and we're a government that supports aspiration. That's why no one held back. That's why part of our announcements last Sunday, 3-part, lifting the threshold, 20% cancellation of debt and free TAFE into the future, is about saying to young Australians or saying to Australians who, because of economic restructuring, need to retrain, you're not alone. We're with you. We will give you support to aspire to a better job, to aspire to a better standard of living. And that's something that is a focus of my government. So it's twofold. Cost of living support immediately is what we've been focused on, but also those changes that make sure that as the economy changes, people can get that opportunity to benefit from it. And that's the focus. We're in difficult global economic times. This is the, interest rates are higher in the United States, New Zealand, the UK than they are here. This has been a global inflationary impact. My government's been determined to deal with that in a way that's practical, to deal with it in a way where we emphasise, as you would have heard in a couple of speeches from me, we want an economy that works for people, not the other way around. Karen?
Prime Minister, President-elect Trump has said that he will withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement. How will that affect your climate and energy policies? Will you need to adjust them? And will you commit to announcing a 2035 emissions reduction target before the next election?
Well, I got asked that yesterday in Parliament, Karen, so I refer you to my answers there, which are we're focused on our 2030 target. We are focused on delivering our target to 2030, which is 43%, which is legislated, and net zero by 2050. With regard to our policy, one of the things that I've said before as well is even if you were a climate skeptic and didn't believe any of the science and didn't notice that there were more floods and more bushfires and more cyclones, it would still be good policy because it will produce the cheapest form of energy, not the most expensive, which we know is nuclear. It will create jobs. It will allow Australia to have a future made in Australia, because the vision of clean, renewable energy powering advanced manufacturing is where Australia's future is into the 2030s. I'll take one more.
Thanks, PM. Just to follow up on Karen's question, you mentioned going to APEC and G20. That happens next week. In light of the Trump election victory, do you want an outcome at the G20 on climate change that is very strong on a commitment to cutting emissions in the future? Do you want that outcome at the G20 despite the election of Donald Trump?
Well, I'm convinced that the G20, like other international forums I've been in, will overwhelmingly be focused on climate action, because the whole world is moving in this direction. We know that they're doing that because of environmental reasons, yes, but also because it makes good economic sense, because it's about creating jobs in their respective economies. And certainly at CHOGM, it was a focus. At APEC, I'll be having meetings in APEC. The first meeting we've got scheduled after I arrive will be with President Prabowo, and I look forward to catching up with him. One of the things that Australia and Indonesia have had discussions on is how we cooperate in the clean energy transition. The work that Nicholas Moore has done as part of the Southeast Asia strategy, economic strategy to 2040, is a blueprint for Australian growth, Australian jobs, a more dynamic economy that benefits not just us but the entire region. Thanks very much.